first attempt at one of Theo's things, you know, but the jig parts actually fit onto my cup chuck arbor. I don't know whether you got one of those.
Yeah, I have one of your ones for the spheres. Yeah, so
yeah, that just dropped straight on there.
You kick off the show and tell just before you go any farther, Paul. This is Paul Howard that makes all of the sphere jigs and the routing jigs. He makes. You mentioned that he'll make a jig for it. So now, Paul, the people know who you are. Just explain what you made and why and how, please.
Well, I watched Theo's demo making this three-winged bowl, and he cut a couple of discs to fit into his chuck, and then he made a piece that fitted over his revolving center with a triangle cut in it to support the corners of the cube. So I looked at it. I watched the demo yesterday morning, and then in the afternoon I went out to the workshop and I made the one that goes onto the tailstock, and that fits onto my cup chuck arbor with the triangle cut in it. And then for the chuck end, instead of making a disc to go in the chuck, I made a complete piece to go in there. But I thought that the triangle might be a little bit small for some bigger size cubes. So I've put a larger one in the other side. So it's sort of double-sided, so you can use it either way round, you know.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, so there'll be one on its way to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And all I'm going to do is, and Helen as well, I'm going to send Helen one, because I don't know whether you've got one of the arbors. Have you, Helen?
I was first in the queue. Get back, Pat.
Yeah.
No. I'm sorry, Pat is top of the list on this one.
Sorry, Helen. But what I'm going to ask you to do is just I support a particular charity, and I'll send you the link, and I'll get you just to make a donation to the charity, if that's okay with you too.
No, thank you very much.
I'll get those in the post. I don't know whether you'll get it for Christmas, but Santa's sleigh's pretty full at the moment, so I don't know whether there's room for that on there. So.
I went to order something off of Amazon today, Amazon UK, to hopefully have it before Christmas. My computer laughed at me, so yeah.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, so it just
Simon Hope actually drove over to Germany to deliver a load of stock for KS, and he took a load of my jigs with him as well, you know, because we were having trouble getting stuff over there quick enough. But I think it's mainly because they're worried about this Brexit thing, you know. So
yeah.
Anyway, I think you know, I think he did it just in time because they've completely shut down Germany as far as travelling and stuff now. So
yeah, Holyhead's virtually gridlocked.
Yeah,
there's nothing going on the ferries at all. They're really struggling.
Yeah,
they've closed the road so they can stack the wagons.
Right.
Is there, folks? Has anybody got anything for show and tell, just in case we miss it? Because I know people are making an effort to put some work out there. If you have anything to show us, Helen, you watch the screen there and spotlight people, please.
Yeah, I've got Kenny's got his hand up there.
Thank you.
Kenny on spotlight.
My first basket weave that I made a smaller one, front and back, since I got so much time on my hands. And then I went to this one to get a little bit more difficult than that and bigger.
Well, really nice, really nice. So was this Harvey's inspiration or prior to Harvey?
Well, it was Harvey's inspiration. It was the fellow in our club that started making them, and I know him, so he showed me how, and then I started making them, because with the COVID thing now, you got a lot of time on our hands, so I decided, well, what else to do?
Yeah, well, at least the beauty about the basket illusion is once you have the burning done, you can sit down in your armchair in the house and do some colouring. So, okay, Helen, anyone else there, Helen?
Yeah, I think I just saw Richard with his hand up.
And find Glenn Key on my screen. Okay, Richard, you're up, spotlighted. Hey, more basket illusion. You're muted, Richard. Unmute yourself, Richard, please. We can't do it for you.
There you go.
Thank you.
I'm the friend of Kenny's, and this was the latest basket weave that I've done, and it's about a 13-inch bowl or 13-inch platter of hard maple.
Beautiful. Really nice. Can we see the back of it? Is it on the back of it? Oh, excellent. Yeah, that's really nice. Oh, Harvey be well chuffed tonight to so many people here after getting inspiration from him. Okay, Helen, next, please. Thank you.
Yep,
Thank
we've got
you.
Glenn. I'm just getting him there. There we go.
Okay. Yeah. I've been making these little ornaments. Yeah. Been making them so quick and giving them away that I don't have anything for my family.
They're really cool. Everybody is doing those now. They're great fun, aren't they?
Oh yes. Oh yes. They're fun and it gives people a smile during the holidays. So
Exactly, Glenn. That's what it's all about. A bit of fun. Okay, Helen, next, please.
Yep, I've got Graham there's just sent a message in. He's got something.
Okay, Graham, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks, Pat. This is just a work in progress, really, but at the moment it's modified for Christmas with a illuminated Christmas tree in it. So multi-axis holoform.
Tilt it forward in the top, Graham.
Pardon?
Tilt it forward a bit so we can see inside of it. There you are. Back to you. Back to you. There you go. That's cool.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I've also got an old one I did some years ago, which is inside out turning. Christmas tree with a light in that as well. Yeah.
Where would we be without LEDs these days, huh?
Okay.
Thank you very much, Graham. Okay, Helen.
Yep, we've got Harold.
How are you?
Yeah.
This is my Freddie and the Juniors singing group. They just came back from the Mustache Lounge.
Brilliant.
I just made them up.
Yeah.
I made
Excellent.
this one before, and Helen made a comment, so I made the rest of them. So there you go. They're not as nice as Helen's bowls, though.
Look, they are nice, Harold. And yeah, 10 out of 10 for Harold with the Christmas tree. Chloe did put it into the email that a Christmas attire would be a extra point. So yeah, I don't think you can get better than that. Okay, Helen, anybody else there?
This one's Chloe's not here, but this is for Chloe. We've got Eddie.
Hey, thanks, Eddie.
He doesn't
Chloe loves the pets, so yeah, thanks, Eddie. So I seen somebody there. Rick, was it? Can you see Rick?
Rick, yeah. 2 seconds. Right.
Good morning, everybody from Astoria, Oregon.
Hello, Rick.
This is called Portal. We have an arts organization about an hour drive from here, hour and a half, called the Hoffman Center for the Arts. They put out a call for their January color show, which is black and blue. That's the only two colors, and you had to use both of them. And so this is Western red cedar, about 11.5 inches diameter. Turned on my 7750, and then I do a lot of texturing. I like to abrade back the softwood, and I do that either with wire brushes on the flex shaft. In this case, I use the 3M radial mops, 36, 50, and 80 grit, and then black leather dye. And to get the blue, it was serendipity years ago. I was going for black liming wax on the black dye, and the black dye caused the liming wax to go this denim blue. And I thought, that is so cool. And so after I've done all that, then I just burnish it back. And then this has black Chesco, allowing me to burnish it. As you can see, a little bit of shine there.
Excellent.
And it's just still playing on the bass. I have a lot of fun doing this. Thanks for looking.
Thank you very much. Fun being the operative word here, guys. So, okay, Helen.
I think Joe might have something there. Yeah. Go.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, it's not a illusion, but it's a platter that I just a piece of spalted maple, but inlaid in a number of different ways. A large band here. This is turquoise and malachite. I like to mix the two so it, adds a little bit more spunk to it. And then there's a thin razor line of turquoise around this edge.
That's the English black and white comedy, yeah.
Yeah. This centerpiece is actually cut out of ash, 5 different pieces. And where the 5 pieces go together, I cut them
before you.
as I put it together, and that gave me room to then fill that with turquoise.
Excellent. That's really nice. Beautiful.
And then one thing I do on all most of my platters is, and everybody's probably aware of it, I just undercut this edge on the foot, and that way you use a sheet metal screw or a wood screw on the wall, and you have the option to just easily hang the platters on the wall.
Yep, good idea. Thank you, Joe. Okay, Helen.
Nobody's waving anything that I can see. Is
Okay, I see a hand up there. Michael S. Gibson. I'm a bit away from my monitor, so I don't have the right glasses on to see the spotlight. So if you can find them.
Yeah. Right,
Good afternoon, everybody. This is a piece that I just finished, made from Bradford pear with a ebony finial. I spent a lot of time texturing the leaves on this one.
That's beautiful, Mike. A lot of work there. Just hold it back to you a little bit, Mike. You're too close to the camera. There you go. Perfect. Well, really a lot of fine texture on those leaves.
Yeah, I spent more time trying to get the smaller veins done in this one. It took a long time, but I think it was worth it in the long run.
Definitely. Your time and efforts have paid off. Excellent. Thank you very much, Mike.
What kind of wood is that, Mike?
Bradford pear.
Okay, Helen, next, please. If anybody has a TV on in the background, you kindly knock it off, or a radio, please. Just as very distracting. Or mute.
going to wave anything now?
Anybody want to put their hand up there with anything to show us anything further? Okay. Everybody's all shy today. I know you guys and gals have all been turning. You have work. Don't be shy. Okay, Braxton, I see you. I'm Braxton there, Helen.
Yep, I've got him.
Okay, oh yeah, that spotlight, so remove that. There you go. Thank you. Hey, Braxton.
Hey, how's everybody doing? I have I've been turning a bunch of these little kind of demented snowmen. So here's a guy holding his own head. I don't. All the rest of them are inside. My kids like to play with them, but this was the one I had out in the garage right now. So
I saw some of those on Facebook. Great fun. You're a sick man, Braxton. Sick man.
Here, one more quickly. Chopping, building a moose for my sister-in-law. So there's my.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, you scored on the festive market there, so that's good. That's good. Okay, Helen. Anybody else? Oh, I see a lovely dog there for Chloe.
I've got
George Morris.
hand up there.
Come on, you have the control.
Yeah.
Hi, Kenny again. Here's another one I got since I got a lot of time on. I started making these.
Wow, there's a lot of work in those.
Well,
Yeah.
when you got lots of time, might as well do something with it.
You need lots of time for those anyway, Kenny.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent work. Some fantastic work again, folks. They're all doing amazing stuff. Okay, Helen.
I think we've got the lovely Linda. Were you waving, Linda? There we go.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Linda.
Good afternoon. Hi, I've been working on these little seed pods. So I worked on 4 of them to experiment with size and a little bit of shape and some coloring variations. So just trying to work out some of the details, like working around the leaf stems and etc. So exploring and experimenting.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Linda. Helen, if you don't find that little doggy soon, it's going to jump in through the monitor at you. So.
Whose little doggy am I looking at?
George Morris.
There he is. I've got him. There we go.
Yeah, so this is for Chloe. Chloe is the animal lover. Anybody just joined us? Chloe is having internet problems tonight, unfortunately, in her locality. She's on my side of the country now. Unfortunately, where she's living, there's an issue with it. So, thank you, George. Good to see you again.
Says high, and we got 3.5 feet of snow on Wednesday.
Well, don't let that little lad or lady out in it. He will be lost. So,
That was the first job, shovel on the spot for her.
Anybody else got any work there? Oh, Alan Joycey has his hand up there. Alan.
Just give me 2 seconds. Got you
So
there.
once you find them in the list there, there you go. Perfect. You're getting good at this. I'll do the admissions when you're doing that. Hi, Alan.
Hi, how are you doing? This
Good.
one's in for your benefit as well, I think, Pat. It's created a little bit of a stir on Facebook today.
Oh, wow.
It's made from a cube.
Excellent.
It is a little box. The trick is to sort out how on earth it got made.
It looks like a fish when you look at it there, Alan.
It does, it does.
That's cool. Wow.
It's
You don't do the simple jobs, Alan.
if I show you the official orientation, you might recognize it as a cube or derived from a cube.
Ooh, yeah, kind of.
Kind of. If I was to suggest that it has 3 different mountings between the points.
I think I probably eat it first.
In the same way as a triform bowl would be made. And then you work on the circumferences from 3 different directions as well. So it's about 8 or 9 variations on the orientation of the mount to create it. But people are asking, how on earth do you make it? Well, I had to think really hard about how I had made it because it was so complicated. But there you go.
It'll be another good one to see you demonstrate, Alan, when you start all this demonstrating.
Once we get sorted.
Thanks very much, Alan. Good to see you.
You're welcome. Ta-ra.
Okay, Helen, we have another 5 minutes, so pick somebody else there.
This one is just for the amazing jumper.
Hey, well, there's the winner chicken dinner. Hey, Kevin. Brilliant.
Good evening, everyone.
I love you, Ken. Lovely that.
Good evening, Kevin. I
Excellent.
thought I'd be the village idiot. It's a bit tight. It must have shrunk from last year, I think.
Oh yeah, you washed it. You boil washed it, Kevin. That's nothing to do with the COVID stone.
I think I have, yes.
Excellent. Thanks, Kevin. Good fun. Good fun. Okay, Helen.
Is anybody else going to wave?
Well, I see another Sandy hat on Jeffrey Schnell there, so.
That's one for Barry. It's a cowboy Santa hat.
Can you see him, Helen?
Oh, no, I'm not sure what page.
If you look at
Hey,
it,
I found a couple things in the closet.
Right, I've got him.
Yeah, I found a couple things in the closet I thought I'd show here. His left ear Jeff here. This is an ornamental turned vase I bought. You see the intricacy of that. It's just amazing.
Very
I
nice.
just happened to find a closet looking for some tax stuff. This is from 2011. It says Rose Engine Car by Dr. Amos Whip, W-I-P-F. This is actually by one of my buddies, Bob Brochart. I happened to find that at a garage sale locally one day, and I didn't have the heart to tell him I bought it. It's a shame.
Wow.
So we decided to get rid of it. Just it's a cute little thing to do with bits and pieces of wood. And then I got one more, just a little birdhouse is part of it. I have to go back a little bit. Just cute little thing. Not
Nice.
sure where it came from.
In
Though.
there, yeah.
It was just, and I don't think I did any of these. Definitely not those other two. So, but I'd like to share.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
That's
Anybody else, Helen?
I can see. Has anybody got their hand up there?
Theo has his hand up there on the bottom of my screen, if you can see Theo.
Yes, I've got Theo, and then after Theo, I've got Gary there. I can see you.
Okay.
Theo first.
Hey, Theo.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's about near 4:45 here. I've just woken up. And so, you've spotlighted me. Yeah, so nobody can probably guess what this is, but this is especially made for diabetics. It's a personalized Chupa Chup holder. So you can put your Chupa Chup in there. And this is the, so there's my Chupa Chup. It just goes.
Back to you a bit.
I'm not really good with the camera when I'm not in my workshop. So basically it's turned, it's like a little ice cream cone. It's drilled. It involves a lot of different elements in wood turning, and you can even color it. And this is the robust version for hiking. So if you're diabetic, you can take this and it keeps it nice and safe for you until just in case you need a sugar hit, and you can so you just put it around your neck.
Excellent.
Take it with you hiking.
That's a great one for the kids as well, folks.
Just a fun thing for the kids and something to make for those people that have got everything. They won't have one of these.
Yeah. Thank you, Theo. Good to see you.
Okay.
Okay, Helen, next, please.
Gary.
Okay, one more after Gary. Okay. Hey, Gary.
How are you doing, guys? I took a class with Art Leishman, and he was on burning wood with a big, huge propane torch. And what I love is wood. So I told him, I said, I'd like to be able to come up with a way of having wood and burning together. And he said, well, good luck with that. So what what I was after was this. Where am I? There we go. To come up with a way of doing that, where it's completely burnt, but wood on top and bottom, and we've got a little lid to lift off. And I wanted to do that, and I spent hours trying to figure it out. And when I found the answer to it, that when you burn it, this had to be bigger. So I went like that. I made a donut out of the piece of wood. And so the donut allowed me to burn the top and bottom, which allowed me to turn it down later to get the burn part off and have the wood. So I was able to have the burn in the middle with the wood top and bottom to create that effect.
Very nice, Gary. Very nice.
So
it
was a way around having wood and burning all on the same piece.
All right. Next time I'm doing the brick illusion, you can see, and I'll show you how to do it right. It's okay.
Yeah, this was just wire burnt and then joint between. Like the circles were just done with a wire and then burnt down after that. But I saw yours one time where you did it all freehand, so every brick looked individual. I like that idea better than the burn lines.
The charred effect is really nice. Okay, so right, Helen, if you will find Harvey and be ready to spotlight him, we'll just do the housekeeping. You just stick my ugly mug up there for a moment, please. So no sign of Chloe, I take it. Right, you need to mute everybody, Helen, please, first. Okay, so we're down.
Right, Pat.
Okay. Okay, I'm unmuted. Can we get the thumbs up? Everybody can hear and see me there for the moment, please. Thank you very much. This is my favorite bit of technology. So anybody who's just joined us, as I mentioned, Chloe has dropped out there. So we're down the boss tonight. Her internet isn't very agreeable where she is. She was living on the west of Ireland. She's come back over my side. She's 20 minutes from where I am here at the moment. But so hopefully she'll be back in to join us and help out. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever time it is with you folks. You're all very welcome. We are recording down to Harvey's discretion whether we release it later on or not, but we will see how that goes. Yeah, so happy Christmas, everybody, and thanks to the people who made the effort with the outfits. Kevin, you definitely win there. Harold was winning with the Christmas tree, but I think Kevin won with that jumper. Spectacular. Yeah, really love it. So what do we see? Just go through the housekeeping as usual. So anybody not familiar with it, I think most of you are at this point. If you have a question, please, chat box is on the bottom of your screen. If you have an iPad, it'll be on the top. Quick note about the iPads. If you're having issues after this meeting, delete Zoom and reinstall it. So that's the simple thing to do because there's a few gremlins with Zoom on iPads. But for tonight, anyway, hopefully there'll be no issues. So if you have a question, please put it into the chat box. We appreciate 99.9% of people stay muted, and it just helps it run really smoothly. At the end of it, we can have a chat and work it that way. I mentioned the chat box. As usual, we save that. Chloe edits it and will be sent out to everybody again. Just if Harvey mentions any links to tools, equipment, or whatever, or comments from other people there that we feel worthy of sharing will stay in it and they will be sent out after the meeting with the recording if Harvey agrees to that. So we'll see how that goes. So thanks to everybody for the donations, helping to keep this running, covering the admin costs. As we say, it's free. We're not making a profit on this. It's just covering the admin. So our little give back to the donators is just that, a mug. So Chloe is in touch with me there through Messenger. So she will check out the names in the emails. It's just she's not able to maintain the Zoom connection. And whoever is will get to pick a mug. There's 5 or 6 now, I think, on my website. You can just pick whichever one you want and it'll be sent out to you. It'll be drawn at the end in case there's any other donations come in between now and then. So I think that's kind of it. Other than just, again, I'll say happy Christmas to everybody. I hope you're all safe and well and avoiding this COVID. So if Helen would find Mr. Harvey Meyer, and we can spotlight Harvey. I see Harvey waving at me. Here he is. Good evening, Harvey. How are you?
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are.
Yes, it's good afternoon to you, isn't it? So,
has anybody had the same problem with COVID as I have, where it shrinks your clothes? Seems everything,
Harvey, we're going to
seems to be shrinking from COVID.
We're going to ban you from the bad jokes, Harvey. Okay, so
I have a mask I can put on too if.
Well, thanks very much for joining us, Harvey. We appreciate your time. So I'm sure you saw some of the show and tell. You've been a big inspiration and help to a lot of people already on this thing tonight. So so we're going to throw some of these questions at you and we'll interrogate you. Okay, so Helen, if you're monitoring the questions, please, and let me know if Chloe pops back in as well. So Harvey, the first one, what got you interested in wood turning?
That's a good question. I'll try not to be too long in my answers. So I've been woodworking since I'm 10 years old. And I built a lot of furniture. Mostly I was a flat worker up until a little over 20 years ago. And I was used to belong to an internet forum called Badger Pond. And it was something like Wood Central and WOW is, just an internet type of group where people of like mind can get together and discuss issues. So there was a turning group on this Badger Pond, which it no longer exists. But guys kept posting pictures of things that they were turning, mostly bowls. And I found that very interesting, that something I never envisioned myself doing. So that sort of wet my whistle a little bit. But then I was here in Atlanta. We have a very well-known woodworking supply place called, used to be Highland Hardware, and now it's Highland Woodworking. And I think twice a year, they used to have a big tent sale in their parking lot. And during the tent sale, they would have somebody demonstrating all kinds of things. And I used to go to that all the time. And I would watch the demonstrator who was doing the wood turning. And these are guys that are local here in Atlanta. And the 2 guys that I used to see all the time were Frank Bowers and Wes Jones. And I used to just watch the ribbons of shavings coming off the tool. And that's kind of what got me to the point where I knew I had to start it. So I started watching the local papers for somebody selling a lathe, and finally, not too far from me, somebody was selling one of those old Craftsman tube lathes that they used to sell at Sears. And it also came with a set of 8 Craftsman tools. So I bought that and I hauled it home and set it up in my shop and proceeded to start wood turning. Now, of course, I didn't know a spindle gouge from a skew, from a scraper, from any tool, nor did I know how to hold a piece of wood on a lathe. But I managed to hack out a tiny little bowl that was about 2 inches in diameter. and it was about an inch thick at the bottom and about an eighth of an inch thick at the top. But that was my very first foray into wood turning. And it was cherry, and I sanded it up and I finished it. And I was so proud of that until I took a lesson also at Highland Woodworking. I took a class on bowl turning, and a local guy, Frank Bowers, was the instructor of that class. And then I made my first bowl, which was about 8 inches in diameter and had reasonably decent wall thickness. And that's when I would say the needle was stuck into my arm. It was no turning back from that point.
Yeah.
Then my wife bought me a private lesson with Frank Bowers, and he came to my shop and told me how I need to get rid of this Craftsman lathe. And shortly after, I did get rid of it. But anyway, that was pretty much the start for me. And that was, I want to say, I think it was in 1999. So 21 years ago or so.
So for anybody
that's my answer to that question.
So anybody unfamiliar with that brand of lathe, then Harvey, you didn't start off with a Rolls Royce of lathes, then I take it.
No, that was actually, I guess, 4 lathes ago.
Yeah. So, well, you mentioned that you got tuition, very important, I suppose, for all of us at the start. So what was the first pieces that you actually turned, Harvey?
So the very first things that I turned were bowls. I know a lot of people start with spindle work and do pens and, small spindle items like that. But since I took a lesson on bowl turning, I started turning bowls. And I turned so many bowls, there was basically just nowhere to put them anymore in the house. And my wife, I think by now I graduated to a Jet 1236, if I'm not mistaken. And my wife said to me, doesn't that machine let you make anything other than bowls? And I said, yeah, sure it does. So that's when I started turning pens. And then I turned pens and I got involved with the Turn for the Troops thing. So I was turning pens. I was doing like 20 pens every evening after work. And on the weekends, all I did was turn pens. So I probably turned, like 500 pens or something like that. And then I got sick and tired of turning pens. So, so that ended the pens. But then I started getting into other things, smaller projects, ornaments and things like that, platters. But it wasn't until I got into hollow vessels that I found my true thing, the thing that I love doing more than anything was the hollow vessel.
Yeah, the addiction of the hollow form. So your first tools, Harvey, tell us about your first wood turning tools and your experiences with those.
So the very first tools I had were those set of 8 Craftsman tools. Of course, there was no bowl gouge in that set. They were all spindle tools. And after I took that lesson on my first lesson on turning a bowl, I bought my, excuse me, I bought my first bowl gouge, and it was a Sorby, what we call the 1/2 inch, meaning 1/2 inch shaft with a 3/8 inch flute. And of course, I didn't know anything about sharpening yet, so I wore that tool down to nothing in no time, trying to learn how to sharpen it. But that was the first, what I would say, quality tool that I ever bought. And then after that, I started buying other Sorby tools. And now, some 20 something years later, I've got more tools than I can count. And, always that thing about one tool from greatness, or he who has the most tools when he dies wins. I'm winning, but not as much as some other collections that I've seen in my travels. But I have way, and I can't say way enough times, more tools than I will ever need if I live to be 300 years old.
Yeah, but you're still going to be like the rest of us, Harvey, and buy more because we are magpies, hoarders of tools.
No argument there, Pat. No argument.
I've seen your collection, and it is an impressive collection of tools. Harvey has a drawer system, and it's just amazing to have a look at. So.
And we all have the same fear that when we pass away from this world, that our wives don't sell our tools for what we told them we paid for them.
Exactly, exactly. So I know you're a Powermatic man nowadays, Harvey. So what would your go-to lathe be now if you had the choice? Because I know you've demonstrated everywhere and probably used all of these lathes. So
I have been fortunate that I've used just about every lathe that's of the major brands, Powermatics, Jets, One Ways, Robusts, Vic Marks, and so forth. I like Powermatic. I've got two Powermatic 3520s, an A model and a B model. And I don't foresee ever needing anything bigger or better than either of those lathes. I will say, though, that the Robust is an impressive machine. And I suppose if I was ever going to treat myself to a top of the line lathe, I would probably go with the Robust. I mean, I would say that there's probably nothing that I can't do on the Powermatic that would make the Robust any better for me. But it's just a really nice, smooth machine, very well designed. As you know, if money was no object, I would treat myself to it.
yeah,
But I mean, I've got the two Powermatics; they'll last me until I croak. So,
yeah, all impressive machines that you've mentioned. So,
but I will say though that the few times that I've turned on a Vic Mark, I have never seen a more solid, quiet machine than a Vic Mark.
Yeah, well, I'm
And
slightly
likewise for their chucks. Vic Mark is, I don't know, I was so impressed with those machines. Once when I turned on them in Australia, and another time here in the US, someplace that I demoed had a Vic Mark, and I was happy to turn on those.
yeah.
You wouldn't think a lathe makes such a big difference. You know, they all do the same thing. They all spin the piece of wood. We all put the tool on a tool rest, you know, and we turn them on. And, you know, most of the good lathes now all have variable speed. You wouldn't think it would be that important, but there's just something about the feel. It's hard to describe, but I don't know what it is.
If somebody knocked on your door in the morning, Harvey, to give you back your first lathe, would you swap it for the Powermatic then?
Oh, hell no. I wouldn't even, I would tell them to leave it at the curb.
So there's your answer to that thing about the lathes making a difference. So, so when you were learning your turning career, in your start of your career, Harvey, so what was the eureka point that you found in your turning that you felt that things, yeah, I've got this now, I've nailed it?
The eureka point. So there actually was a eureka point for me. And I think it took me way too long before I found that. And I use the bowl gouge more than any other tool. And that's the tool that I'm most comfortable with, although I love all my tools. But the thing that changed everything for me, the thing that made me finally realize that I can get a surface quality off the tool as good as everybody else, is when I learned to float the bevel instead of rubbing the bevel. And that was, to me, it just happened one day. And I don't know, like I must have seen somebody or watched somebody, or somebody kept drilling it into my head. I don't remember. But the day that I learned to stop pressing the bevel into the wood and to just caress the surface or float it or kiss it or whatever, that was the day I became a wood turner. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, that lovely stream of shavings where the tool isn't bouncing is a nice feeling to. I remember it as well. So, yeah, just lots of people putting in the chat box there where you're all from. We really like to see that. It just gives us an idea of the demographic of the whole meeting. So that's good. Thank you very much. So, is there any questions there, Helen?
No, we're good at the minute.
Okay, so no sign of Chloe yet, I take it. So,
Not yet.
okay, so Harvey, for people starting out, advice for beginners, please.
So the advice that I give every beginner, and I've seen a lot of beginners in my travels and teaching and doing hands-on and stuff. The best advice I could always give is to join a club. First of all, I mean, you get more out of belonging to a wood turning club than you'll get out of YouTube any day. And then the second bit of advice I would always give is to take a lesson. Find somebody who is a good instructor and take a lesson from that person. And I don't care where you live in the world, there's somebody that's not that far away from you that is very qualified to teach you how to turn wood. And then the third thing is there's no reason anybody needs to go it alone to try to learn to do this the hard way. The hard way is to try to figure it out yourself and to watch some crappy videos on YouTube. Now, there are some very, very good videos on YouTube, including mine, of course, but there's more bad ones, I think, than good ones. So when you don't know how to turn and you're watching somebody else on YouTube, you don't know if that person is doing it correctly, incorrectly, doing it well, or doing it poorly. You just see somebody doing something that you don't know how to do yet. So I can't emphasize enough those first two things, is joining a club and then taking lessons from somebody that knows what they're doing. And of course, the best places to take lessons are at some of the better wood turning schools. Of course, none of them are open right now during COVID times. But you know, in the U.S., we have Aramont and John Campbell. And out on the West, you got Craft Supplies in Utah that has classes, and the one in Colorado, I can't remember the name of it, in ski country there. But there's a number of good wood turning schools in the U.S. And a lot of clubs have scholarship programs. I know my club here in Georgia has a good scholarship program where they'll give you up to $750 to take wood turning instruction, as long as you're a paid up member. And other clubs have similar things. So that's basically the best advice I think anybody can ever give you, is join a club and take a lesson to get started.
Yeah, sound advice, Harvey, because safety being first, there is a lot of things on YouTube we wouldn't be encouraging people to watch. But and I suppose with the age that we're in now with IRDs and Zoom and whatever, there's a lot of people doing remote teaching. If nothing else, just to help you out a little. It's not the same as obviously being in someone's workshop, but maybe reach out to somebody that might help you resolve some of the issues you're having. So
yeah.
Go ahead,
One of the
Harvey.
things I should point out too about all of the stuff on YouTube is if you belong to the AAW, on their website, they have a section of videos that have been vetted by the AAW for safety and the quality of the material. So if you belong to the AAW, you can go to the website and look at the videos, and then you can be steered to videos that will actually help you and not harm you.
Yep, good on Harvey. And just another one on that, Jimmy Clue's website there, he has a members area with some great tutorials on it for projects as well. So there's two good places to go. Helen will be popping in some links there, Harvey's website, and anything that we miss will go out in the chat, so don't worry. Anybody that's with a pen and paper, don't worry about it. This will be emailed back out to you. So okay, Harvey, so any people that have inspired your turning? You mentioned Frank Bowers, was it, at the start there? So any other people along the years of encouragement?
Well, how much time do we have?
Oh, anytime. I'm here all night.
So, I mean, I started out with Frank Bowers because Frank's a good friend of mine, and he was the very first person that I learned anything from. And if you live in the Southeast part of the United States, I'm sure you know Frank, because Frank is taught and demonstrated, I mean, everywhere in the Southeast. But as far as the people that have really inspired me and made me the turner that I am today, I mean, the first person I got to say is John Jordan. I learned from John form. And I don't know how I learned it from John. And I have taken a class with John, but I think I learned form from John just by looking at John's work. I don't think anybody does form better than John does. So that's probably the first name that I got to kick out there. The second name I like to kick out is probably my favorite person next to you, Pat, is Stuart Mortimer. Stuart is just first of all, he's a super class act guy. And I've had the good fortune of spending time with him when he was here in the US. He stayed with me a number of times. But Stuart's work, again, for form and the technical expertise and all those spiral carvings that he does and all that, just impresses the heck out of me every time I see something that Stuart's been doing. So I always got to give a shout out to Stu. Alan Batty's another person that I learned from, as well as Stuart, his son. Nick Cook here in Atlanta was a guy that I took some classes from to learn how to use a skew. That was so long ago that I really don't use a skew very often. So I'm not sure if I would consider myself competent in a skew today. I could probably get by, but Nick has taught me quite a bit on spindle turning technique. Dick Singh's another guy that I took a class with a long time ago. And the Christmas ornaments that I do today are all inspired by Dick Singh. Trying to think who else. Chris Ramsey, the guy that does the hats here in Kentucky. Spent a good bit of time with Chris and turned a few hats myself. Who else out there? So Cliff Lounsbury is a guy from Michigan. And Cliff's the first person that taught me how to turn a hollow vessel. I learned how to take wood out of the inside of a piece through that little hole by spending some time with Cliff. So those are probably the top names that I could think of. But another one I should mention too is Hans Weisflog. That just came to my head for some reason. And Hans Weisflog and Stuart Mortimer, I put those two together in that both of those guys can show you that what you think is impossible can be done.
Yeah.
Just the technical ability of the two of those. And I did take a one-day hands-on class with Hans Weisflog, learning how to do that little lidded box with the lid that has the cut through on both sides that you could see through and all that. It was just amazing. But he's another guy that I find very inspiring.
Yeah, I'm happy to say I've seen a lot of those guys demonstrate. And you know what, Harvey, if there's ever a symposium set up, what a lineup that would be to have all those guys.
Yes, sir.
That would be excellent. Yeah, thanks for that. That's really good. We still okay on questions there, Helen?
Yeah, we do have one question. Richard asked, does Harvey harvest his own wood blanks?
Do I harvest my own wood blanks? So yes and no. I used to listen for the sounds of chainsaws, and then I'd go haul home whatever I could carry home, and I cut it up and seal the ends, and then I put it out in the backyard, and then I watch it rot. So then I learned that you don't need every piece of wood that is being cut down in your area. So I stopped collecting wood that way. Now that I do primarily just basket illusion work, I don't require anywhere near as much wood as I used to, because I don't turn as many pieces as I used to. Because basket illusion work, I get maybe two, maybe three pieces a month since I'm not traveling. And a lot of that is from kiln dried wood that I buy at my hardwood dealer. But when I do use green wood, I get that from Elizabeth Ross, who runs a little wood business here in Georgia called Two Tree Boys. And she, whenever she gets Bradford pear, Michael Gibson and I usually go raid whatever she's got before anybody else gets a chance at it. For the most part, I always keep my eye out for Bradford pear because I do like to work with it. And if I'm not using Bradford pear, then I'm using kiln dried hard maple. And so I really don't harvest wood in that sense anymore. But I also, I'm getting much older. My next birthday starts with a 7. So I found that you know, lifting logs and cutting them up with that gigantic steel chainsaw that I got is probably more work than I care to do at this age now.
Yeah, harvesting wood is a tough job at the best of times, but and just on the age thing, Harvey, this year doesn't count for anyone. So
That's true. You're right. All 2020, we subtract a year.
yeah, so there you go. So everybody remember that you're a year
Thank
younger.
you. Thanks, sir. Thank you for reminding me.
You okay on questions, Helen? Yeah,
Yep,
I
good
think
for
we're
now,
okay.
thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So Harvey, you mentioned your first lathe and one thing and another. So with wood turning evolving over the years, has your attitude and approach then has obviously changed as well? Would you tell us a little bit about that?
So, I mean, for me, you know, my wood turning has changed over the years, obviously. I mean, I started out as a, you know, we typically call the round and brown type guy. You know, I turned wood and sanded it and finished it. You know, so I did lots and lots of hollow vessels, lots of bowls and platters, and everything was basically just, you know, finished naturally. So, you know, I called that round and brown. Of course, I did turn some square platters and things too, but that's still just round and brown. It's just wood. But then, you know, we keep seeing around us how everybody has taken wood turning up a level or two or three or four or more into where we're embellishing what we turn, sometimes taking it apart and reconstructing it in other ways. So a lot of times it's hard to even figure out where was the original wood turning in a certain piece. So for me, it started 8 years ago when I got into the basket illusion, and that was a point in my turning life that changed me and probably forever. So I got going. I started out with this basket illusion, of course, inspired by David Nittman, no doubt about that, but others as well. And there was no one teaching you or showing you how to do it. So I had to sort of reverse engineer the process myself. But I didn't want to be David Nittman or anybody else. I wanted to sort of take what I do and make it my own. So that was like my turning point, where I became, you know, an embellisher, so to speak. Before that, I had been doing some piercing, you know, turning very thin wall hollow vessels and then piercing things out of them with the high-speed, you know, dental drill, like Michael Gibson's doing a lot of now, and a lot better than me. But what you see other people doing now, where the carving and the texturing and the coloring and the dyeing, and some of the things that you're doing, Pat, where those rusty looking pieces that, you know, look like they're iron and have rusted away over the years, but they're wood. I mean, that kind of stuff. I mean, first of all, to even think about that, to even think of doing something different like that, I think that's the moment of masterfulness is when you can think of something that no one else has done before. That's the hardest part of being original. Everybody else is a copycat. So, I mean, I'm not original. I mean, I'm original in that I design all of my own patterns, and you know, I don't copy anybody else's work. But in terms of being the basket illusion guy, you know, other people have done it before me. So, you know, I'm not the first person to come up with this technique called basket illusion, nor was David Nittman. I mean, it was somebody before that. It was Lincoln Seitzman who was the first person. Now, you know, when he thought of it, it was a tremendous moment. So, you know, I can't imagine where we're going to go with this. I mean, what I've seen just in 20 years now, the transition that wood turning has taken from basically round and brown to where it is now. And I can't imagine 20 years from now what people will be doing. Just boggles the mind to even be able to think, where could you possibly go with this that we haven't already been? But then you see things that, like this stuff you're doing now, where you're making wood look like metal and rusty metal. I mean, that's just, it amazes me. And I know this is not about you today, but you're one of the people that have come up with your own thing, because I don't know of anybody that was doing this before. And then you look at some of the work that Michael Gibson's doing, and where Michael's so well known for teapots, but now you look at what Michael's doing with the carving and the piercing and the leaves and things like that, and doing it the way that only Michael would be able to do that. So like, where will Michael be in 10 years? Because he's been reinventing himself. So then that worries me, is like, how do I reinvent myself now? How do I become something other than the basket illusion guy? Or do I even want to? I don't know, so I don't know if I answered the question. I went all over the place.
No, a great answer there. And yeah, to mention Mike's work as well, the way that's evolved, I've watched Mike over the years, exactly. But, the thing is, there's very little unique out there. If anything, what I would say, we're all doing variants and something else. Now, I followed you for a good while, Harvey, and, you talk about other people doing the basket illusion, but my simple thing to do is, when I see other people's basket illusion, there is some really good quality out there, but when I zoom in on pictures, I can almost see, I can nearly tell it's a Harvey, because your work is just so exact and precise, and no scorching, no bleeding of colors. It is phenomenal work. So next time you see Harvey's piece, just zoom in on it and you'll see the quality of it. It's phenomenal work. And we will get to some of that later on at the end of the chat. So we're just mentioning technology as well, Harvey. So, and as it says in the question, not Zoom or social media. So has technology come into play with you in your turning in any way?
So yes, I would say that I have, I'm always very quick to adapt technology. I always think if you could find something that makes things easier, then why not? As long as you're still doing the work, like, I'm not saying that I would want a CNC machine that would turn a hollow vessel for me. I don't think is right. But for example, I use when I do a hollow vessel, I have the camera system where similar to Trent Bosch's visualizer, that I can see, kind of like where my cutting tip is inside the piece by watching on a little monitor. Now that 5 years ago didn't exist, but Trent Bosch, I believe, was the first person to come up with it. And then, many of us have made similar things, out of, parts that we buy on eBay or Amazon, for, fairly inexpensively, but it does the same thing. So, that's one example of how technology has made turning a hollow vessel so much easier. I mean, I can turn a hollow vessel to a 1/16 of an inch thick, trusting that little camera thing, and not even having to use calipers, because I have gotten to the point where I trust this thing so much. Now, before that, we had the laser, the little laser dot that we put, on the outside of the hollow vessel to guide us while we were in the inside. Now that was technology at that time. So we've evolved from turning a hollow vessel, such to say, with just calipers, to using the laser dot, and now using this camera setup. So that's just, there's a good example of, how we've gone from nothing to what we have right now. And, who knows what we'll be using 5-10 years from now. But another example is when I do my patterns for basket illusion. So I started out the very beginning, just sketching them out on paper. And then I learned about polar graph paper. And I learned about a program that I could use that printed out blank sheets of polar graph paper for me. And then I can use that to color in the patterns and figure out how I wanted the piece to look. But then I found that there's software that I could use called Inkscape that lets me design the patterns right on the computer. And this way, if I make a mistake, I can hit the delete key or undo. If I draw out a section of it and I like it, I can copy and paste instead of having to do all of it. If I want to see what it looks like in different colors, I can say, you know, select everything that's blue and make it red. So there's an example of using technology just for, you know, designing the pattern, not actually in the workshop. You know, then we're all, you know, of course, we're using technology, you know, now for, you know, remote demonstrations and things like that, but that's completely something different. I remember when somebody came out with a bowl gouge that had a hollow tube and a hollow handle that you can attach a vacuum to, and they called it the vacuum gouge. And that didn't work too well, and it failed. Not exactly technology, but there was just somebody trying to take a tool and make it better. It didn't quite work well. But I'm a big fan of technology, and anytime I find the better way of doing what I do that makes it easier or more accurate, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I guess, Harvey, like I would have done a lot of hollow forms back in the day, the hard way I call it, where we only had our calipers and things, and it was hard work, but it has been simplified a lot with the cameras. And you know, when we've done our time that way, I think it's not a problem. Harvey did skate over the thing that he does IRDs and demos. So anybody in a club there wants to see a quality demo, Harvey has the highest end technology possible and a really good setup and a really good demo. So make sure and give Harvey a call on that one. His website is gone in there. It won't be hard to find Harvey online anyway. So it's harveymeyer.com, isn't it, Harvey?
Yes, thank you, Pat.
No problem. So people promoting their work, Harvey, do you recommend avenues for people, how they could go about it?
So that's probably one of my weakest points is promoting your work. I'm not very good at it, but with social media now, it's very easy to promote yourself. You know, just Facebook and Instagram alone, you can make yourself well known in a very short period of time, but you got to know how to do it. Now, I've been on Instagram for, I'll say 3, maybe even 4 years now. And I think I'm up to maybe 1,300 followers. And I don't know how to get more followers. I don't quite understand Instagram that well, the whole concept of the hashtags and what are the right hashtags and all that. I mean, I kind of try to do what some of the other well-known woodturners do, but doesn't seem to get me anywhere. I've been like frozen at 1,300 and something for quite some time now. But maybe that's all the people that are out there that are interested in following the kind of stuff that I do. Facebook, there are so many wood turning groups on Facebook, and not just the big ones that you think of, like woodchuckers and wood turners around the globe. There are many other ones. And lately, Michael Gibson has been inviting me to join some of these other ones that I didn't even know existed. So, I mean, those are great ways of getting yourself known if you want to promote your name. But now, if you wanted to sell your pieces, to sell your work, that's another whole thing. I don't think Facebook or Instagram or social media really helps sell much. I think what sells your work is word of mouth and good advertising, or getting into the right kind of galleries that can support the kind of work you do. Not all galleries are the same. That's something I've learned the hard way over time. Some galleries, even though they call themselves galleries, they're more like better off for crafts or lower end things. To get into galleries that sell high-end stuff, it's very difficult to get into them. A lot of them don't want any new artists, or they want to come to you rather than you go to them. So I'm fortunate right now that I'm in a very high-end gallery in Asheville, North Carolina, that's been doing fairly well selling my basket illusion. And I'm not, like as I said, I'm not really good with marketing and learning to promote myself. I've found that once I got out on the demonstrator circuit, that's where I became known. But now, if it wasn't for the basket illusion, I don't think I would ever be. I wouldn't be sitting here today being interviewed. I don't think I would be a well-known wood turner at all. I think I would just be another wood turner if it wasn't for the basket illusion. That's what lifted me out of what I was in and made me into something different. And then when I got invited to do my first demonstrations on basket illusion, then I found that I really liked demonstrating. Before that, I didn't think I ever wanted to demonstrate. But then once I started doing it, I realized that I really, really loved doing it. And then when I started teaching, it's another thing I didn't think I ever wanted to do. But then when I started teaching, I realized how much fun that was. And then teaching makes you a much better wood turner too, because that's when you learn to see what people are doing wrong. And then you start learning a lot more about technique when you have to teach it. So again, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but promoting yourself, it's a lot of work. It really is.
No, it's great information, Harvey. It's all coming across really well. Thank you. Yeah, so excellent. Yeah, I agree with you, the Instagram thing. I just don't get it myself when I see people with hundreds of thousands of followers, and like yourself there, I have a few on it, but I just don't fully understand it either. But anyway, that's another discussion for another time, maybe. Yeah, Harvey mentioned YouTube. There's a couple of, we do say there's some good videos on YouTube, and Harvey has two up there. I think, Harvey, is it, or more on the basket illusion?
Yeah, I've got on basket illusion, there's two of them, and both of them were demos that I had done, you know, on the road someplace, and they had asked if they could put it on YouTube. And at first, I didn't want to. I didn't want to be on YouTube. But then the club told me how much revenue they were getting from the ads, and then they said they would edit it and let me, you know, look at it first and all that. And so I relented, and I let them put it on YouTube. Again, it was against my better judgment, but as it turns out, it was probably the best thing I ever did, because that got me to be much better known than I would have been any other way. And then the invitations to do a lot more demonstrations started coming in very shortly after. So the second one was, I know, was at a demo I was doing in Sarasota, Florida. And it was close to 3-hour video, basket illusion, of course. And it was a well done video. They had professional camera people that were sitting in a booth, and the cameras were mounted in the ceiling and stuff. And there was no cameraman standing over my shoulder, but these people that were managing the cameras knew how to do it. And then they put it out on YouTube, and I have it on my website too, on my video page, you know, a link to that particular video. But I do have a few others that are on YouTube as well. I know I did a demo on doing the Beads of Courage boxes. I actually call them canisters more than boxes because they're gigantic. I did a demo on that, and that made its way onto, I think, Mike Peace's YouTube channel. And there's a couple others out there. I don't remember what they are, but basket illusion, I know there's two.
Yeah, and just on saying that too, if you check out Harvey's website, there is some other fantastic pieces of work other than the basket illusion to have a look at as well. So Harvey did make the statement to me one time, he wasn't a one-trick pony. He can turn anything he wants. So there is some fantastic work there other than basket illusion. So check out his website when you get a chance. You okay on questions, Helen?
Yeah, we have one question from Nick. He wants to know what hollowing system you use now, Harvey, and he asked what pros and cons do you see between the different systems?
Okay, so the hollowing system I use now is no longer available, but it was called the Monster hollowing system. And it was it's very similar to a lot of the other articulated systems where you've got the knuckle joints that that mount on a base somewhere on the lathe, either in the banjo, in the tailstock, or on a separate base. And then you got these articulating arms, and then you mount the boring bar, at the end of the articulated arms. So the one I used was made by Monster. And of course, it's no longer available. But what I use to actually do the hollowing is the Kelton hollowing tools. And I've been using the Kelton hollowing tools for probably 15 years or more now. And I've got them in all 4 sizes that they make. So I have the little 5/16 Kelton hollowers that I use just handheld, like to hollow out the little globes for Christmas ornaments. And then I've got the 1/2 inch, 5/8, and the 3/4 that I use for my vessels. And what I like about those tools is that, of course, the cutting tip is in line with the shaft, so there's very little torque. So whether I'm using them handheld or in the captured system, they're very predictable. And the way the curves are in the neck portion, I mean, I could reach any part inside a vessel based, for the types of shapes that I do. But what I really like about them, probably more than anything, is they let me work through a hole that is no more than 1/4 inch bigger than the shaft of the tool. So like on a 3/4 inch bar, I can work through a 1 inch hole very easily, very comfortably, and reach every portion on the inside that I need to get to, and keep even wall thickness. And if I'm using the 1/2 inch tool, I could work through a hole that's anywhere from 5/8 to 3/4 inch. So if you like the challenge of hollowing through small holes, those Kelton tools work really, really well. The other ones that I like, I have them and I don't use them as much, but I do use them occasionally, are the John Jordan hollowing tools. Those are the kinds that have the typical little 3/16 high-speed steel tip in the end that you glue into the end of them, and they're replaceable. But John's also has a very good bend in the neck where the cutting tip is in line with the shaft. So there's very, little to no torque at all. Also a good quality tool. So those are the typical hollowing bars that I use. And I use most of the time, if I'm not doing it freehand, I'm using that Monster articulated system. But before that, I did have a system that was very similar to Jamieson's, but I got it from Cliff Lounsbury, who I mentioned before was the very first person who taught me how to hollow. And Cliff was selling his own system, very similar to Jamieson's. You got the D handle bar and the secondary tool rest on the back. So I had used that one for a long time. And I still do use that one occasionally when I've got to go, I'd say deeper than 12 inches. I like that one better than the articulated one.
Yeah, there's a lot of systems out there, because I remember in 2016 when I visited you over there, I saw Mike Gibson demonstrating various systems, and that was so beneficial to me to pick the one that I wanted in the articulated system. So my advice to anybody out there considering buying one of these systems, try talk to people that have them. And just because they have it doesn't mean that it's a brilliant system. It's just the one that they have. But get advice, because these things are not cheap either, as Harvey will probably tell you. They are expensive items. So, and plus the tools that go with the hollowing system as well. So, you mentioned your work in galleries, Harvey, and I know it's in a lot of private collections. So you have run exhibitions, and have you any exhibitions going at the moment that people could be aware of or anything?
No exhibitions right now. Typically exhibitions, the way I've found it to work is you get invited to be in it. Often I don't even know that there's an exhibition coming up, but I do occasionally get invited to put a few pieces into an exhibition. And those have always turned out very well for me. Matter of fact, trying to think, it was, I think 2 summers ago, I was in 2 exhibitions at the same time, and they were both in Asheville, North Carolina. And one was at the Blue Spiral 1 gallery, and they asked me for 2 pieces. So they chose the pieces they wanted from my website, and then they sold them both during the exhibition. And then when the exhibition was over, they sent me an email asking if I would like to join the gallery. And that was a good moment for me, because that got me into a very, very high-end gallery that has the kind of clientele that can spend the kind of money that that I like to see. So surprisingly enough, is even during COVID times, work is selling at that gallery. Now, of course, they take half the selling price, you know, so you have to be able to deal with that. But still, to see that people will spend that much money on a piece of wood, it just blows my mind, to tell you the truth. But exhibitions, though, if you can get into one, is the best way to get your work seen by the right kind of people, the kind of people you want to see it. Exhibitions are the way to do that.
Yeah, and as you pointed out there, when you see somebody's work in a gallery and it's there for 1,000, 2,000, 20,000, the galleries are the one that are winning there money-wise. The artist, as Harvey just said, is probably getting 50% of it. So, but sometimes you have to bite the bullet to get your work out there, get the exposure that you need. So, you might put a value on it of $1,000, pounds, euros, whatever. The gallery is going to 2.5, but you know, you're going to lose out there at some point. But if you want exposure, folks, this is what you have to do. So thank you, Harvey. Very good info along that one as well. So the lockdown, Harvey, has had a huge impact on everybody across the world. So has it had much of an impact on your wood turning business, or have you spent more time, less time, or?
So it's actually had a very interesting effect for me. So prior to this year, I've been demonstrating a lot and traveling a lot for my demonstrations. And for a while, I really enjoyed the traveling, especially the international travel. Like, you know, going to Australia was like one of the highlights of my life. And then, you know, going to England to demonstrate at AWGB 2 years ago, that was a super duper thing for me. But most of the travel that I've been doing was, you know, driving to demos here in the United States, you know, and you sometimes spend a day driving, and then you spend a couple of days someplace, you know, doing a demo, and maybe a couple of days of hands-on, and then, you know, another day of driving home. So I kind of was getting tired of traveling so much, and I was doing it too much. I mean, I was gone more than a week, sometimes 2 weeks every month. So it was getting old, and I decided that in 2020, I was going to start saying no. And I did. I had absolutely nothing on my calendar going into 2020 other than 2 local clubs here in Atlanta that I was going to demonstrate for. But of course, that didn't involve any travel for me because they were right here. So for 2020, I was not going to do any more traveling and do any more demonstrations. And I had pretty much retired from teaching too. And then along came COVID. And then I see Alan Zenrick formed this Lucid Woodturners group. And I started seeing all about these people doing these interactive remote demonstrations. So I joined Lucid Woodturners, and I also spoke to Alan a good deal. And Alan and I, we even though we never knew each other back when we were young, but we went to the same high school. We were a year apart, but we were both went to Brooklyn Tech in the 1960s. So because we had that bond, Alan was very generous spending his time with me. And convinced me to get into doing the remote demonstrations. He told me that my vascular illusion work would be the perfect thing to be able to do remotely like that. So I started getting involved with learning how to do it and getting the equipment. And of course, as soon as COVID hit, you couldn't buy a camera anywhere, because everybody needed them to work from home. So it was very difficult to get equipment. But that was the same problem all the other demonstrators were facing. So, if you wanted to buy a webcam, you had to pay 2 or 3 times the normal price for one. So slowly but surely, I did acquire the equipment. And then I learned that I needed to get a high-end gaming computer to handle all that video. And then I learned that audio is just as important as video, and lighting is more important than anything. I finally got to the point where I run 4 cameras, and I've done 20 interactive remote demonstrations last year. My first one was in May. So between May and 2 weeks ago, I've done 20 of them, and I've got, I think, 9 already booked for going into next year. I think I've got 5 just in January alone. So what I have learned is that, because I know I love to demonstrate, I just got tired of traveling. So the interactive remote demos has given me a way to keep demonstrating. And then I get to sleep in my own bed. The only negative side of it, well, there's 2 negative sides. And one, of course, is you don't get to have the face-to-face meetings with the people, you don't get the camaraderie and all that. And then the second thing is you have to clean up after yourself. So, typically at a demo, when it's over, you pack your tools up and everybody else comes and sweeps up and vacuums and, and gets rid of the mess. But when you're doing it in your own shop, of course, so you have to clean up after yourself. So anyway, so the biggest effect that COVID has had for me is that it got me into doing IRDs. And then I found that I really, really enjoy doing them. And I put a lot of time and effort into making sure that the people can see what they need to see. I've got the lighting. I've put a lot of work into lighting and cameras and computer and practicing over and over again how to do it flawlessly so that it doesn't affect my actual demonstration. So I don't even have to think about what I'm doing, switching cameras or, changing things around or doing picture in picture and all that. It's just become an automatic thing for me now. So now, all of us demonstrators that are doing that, we're not only demonstrators now, we're videographers, and we're also in charge of our own technical stuff, so, whenever something can go wrong, it's always going to go wrong like 5 minutes before the demo is supposed to start. It never goes wrong several hours before. So you've got to be able to be quick on your feet to be able to troubleshoot what's wrong and things like that. And then of course, you always got to hope that your internet holds up, it doesn't, go down on you in the middle of a demo, things like that.
The amount of variance is right, Harvey. There's so many things that can go wrong. And you did mention, and I like to refer to him as almost a Spielberg of IRDs, and that's Alan Zenrick. He has helped so many people. I had the pleasure of a good call with him last week there, and he just sorted out an issue with my camera in about 3 seconds flat. What the man doesn't know about technology is just not worth knowing. So I think there's a few questions that are popping in there, Harvey. If just Helen is able to just fire them out there, please.
I just want to say that all of us demonstrators that are doing IRDs, every one of us without an exception owes it all to Alan. I don't think any of us would have been able to do, maybe we all might have been able to figure it out, but we would have all worked a lot harder. And I don't think any of us would be doing it as well as we are had we not gotten Alan's knowledge in this thing. And the amount of work and time he's put into helping all of us, he deserves a super duper shout out from everybody.
Agreed, yeah. So Lucid Woodturners, folks, look it up. There's just a vast amount of information on that website for you there, and it's a free website as well. There is a donation there as well to help people out, to help out with admin and whatever. So check it out. Helen has a link in there. Okay, Helen, if you have any questions, please.
Yep, I've got a few here, Harvey. Richard's asking, what's the average amount of time spent on an illusion piece?
So the amount of time I spend on an illusion piece, of course, they all vary depending on how big the piece is and how complex the pattern is. I have gotten a lot faster over the years than I used to be. I have done pieces that have taken me 200 hours. I probably have a few pieces that might have taken me even longer than that. But I would say what used to take me 200 hours now probably would take me half that amount of time, because I've learned tricks to make things go faster. Now, the turning time is inconsequential on it. I mean, to turn a 12-inch platter and have it all beaded, I would say is less than an hour on the lathe. It's the rest of the time that's spent burning and dyeing in the pattern. That's done all sitting in the chair. That's where the real time is spent. And then there's also a lot of time that goes into coming up with the design or the pattern. And sometimes I may spend days working on a pattern just because nothing's coming to me. Like I said, I don't like to copy anything. I do like to look for inspiration all over the place. And sometimes I do find inspiration in actual baskets or pottery and things like that. But I don't copy them. I just maybe take some elements and use those as a basis of it. But some of the hollow vessels that I do now, since most of the hollow vessels, well, I should say all the hollow vessels I do now, I do the basket illusion on the inside as well as the outside. So those are all very time consuming pieces, and they all probably run, I would say, somewhere between 150 to 200 hours total time.
Wow, 200 hours, that's great. We've just
What else do I have to do?
Exactly. We've just had a question from Jim Stevens, asking your opinion, actually. He's wrote, the author of a book entitled Shop Class as Soulcraft promoted the benefits on mental well-being of making and fixing things with one's hands. Does Harvey agree?
So I'm not familiar with the book, but I will say, though, that I have always been a maker and a fixer. My entire life, I mean, I worked for a 43-year career in telecom. In the first half of that time, I was in switching, technician, fixing switching equipment. I love fixing things. I also used to have a little side business fixing televisions and VCRs. You remember those VCRs? I love to fix things. And to this day, anytime something breaks in my house, whether it be something on the house itself or an appliance or something electronic, I will always take it apart and fix it, because I always have a philosophy that if it's broken, you can't break it because it's already broken. So you can't break it more. So you have nothing to lose by attempting to fix it yourself. So over the years, I have learned to fix literally everything possible. I can fix any appliance in the house. I can fix my own furnace, air conditioning, anything electrical, plumbing. I just love fixing things. The satisfaction, though, that I get out of fixing it is really what drives me to do it. It's just it's a rush just to know that that first of all, you save so much money by fixing it yourself. And then you could take that money and buy more bowl gouges with it. So that's kind of the way I do it, actually, is I fix something and I say, all right, that probably saved $200. So what do I need? So is it another chuck or what should it be? I mean, I don't always do that, but I do sort of justify my tool purchases because I save so much money by being able to fix everything. So it is terribly satisfying and rewarding for me to be able to fix things with my hands and of course with my brain. But making things is another whole thing too. I mean, when I start out with a plain piece of wood, and then when it's done and got the finish on it and it's getting ready to be photographed, I mean, that's a rush. It really is, to say, wow, I made that. And then when somebody is willing to part with their hard-earned cash to buy that piece, that just validates you. It really does. So I hope I answered the question.
Just in case anybody is running out there to fix their air conditioning or their VCR, whatever that is, I'm too young to know what that is. If you think you're going to save money on this, remember it was Harvey's fault. He told you to do it, okay? So, okay, Helen, fire away.
There is one more question from Joe. He asks, it's about the illusion pieces again. Do you burn the radial lines on the lathe?
Do I burn the lines on the lathe?
Yeah, he says, do you burn the radial lines on the lathe?
Radial lines. Okay, so the answer is yes and no. If I'm just doing a platter, I do that sitting in the chair. I'll index it on the lathe, pencil in the lines, and then I'll sit down in the chair and do the burning while I'm nice and comfortable in the recliner chair. But if I'm doing a bowl, then it is easier to do the inside of the bowl on the lathe with the burning pen in a little sled. So as I turn the piece to index it, I have the burning pen on a little sled, and then the burning pen is going and touching all of the lines, and then I move the index and I burn. It is easier to do it on the inside of concave surfaces at the lathe, just because the curvature of the concave surface is fighting you when you're trying to do it by hand. There's no place to rest your wrist. So I find that it's easier to do that on the lathe. So when I'm doing my vessels where I do the inside as well as the outside, so the inside of those parts of the vessel get done at the lathe, the outside gets done sitting in my chair.
That's great, thank you. There's just one more question. There's quite a lot of interest about the photo paper, the background paper that you've got behind you there.
Oh, okay.
Where did you get it from?
So obviously you can see that's where I do my photography, right on that desk behind me. That is a graduated gray background. So it's very, very light gray at the bottom where you can't see it. And it fades up to a very, very dark, almost black at the top. And I believe it's made by Varitone, V-A-R-I-T-O-N-E. And you can get it at any good photo supply places, or even on eBay. I think Amazon has them too. I'm pretty sure it's Varitone is the company that makes them, and they're not cheap. I want to say somewhere about $40 to $50. You got to be very, very careful not to scratch it when you're setting a piece down on top of it. If you're going to move the piece, you need to lift it and move it because you don't want to scratch it, because then those scratches will show in your photographs. So that's my second one. The first one I had was actually a white to black fade, and it was very good. I liked the effect that it gave. I did have a number of scratches on the bottom of it, but I could hide the scratches by putting a piece of white paper down. But then when I switched to LED lights in this office that I'm sitting in, all of the pictures came out terrible. So I realized it was because of the LED lights putting out a much whiter light than the lights that I used to have in here. Now, I will be the first to admit that I know absolutely nothing about photography. I don't know an f-stop from a bus stop. I take all my pictures with my iPhone. Don't talk to me about white balance and f-stops and exposures and all that, because I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't want to know what you're talking about. All I know is that I put my iPhone on a tripod and I take a picture and it comes out good. So when I switched from the background that had very white at the bottom to this one that is gray at the bottom, all my troubles went away.
Excellent. Okay, there's some tech questions coming in there, Harvey, about your equipment for your IRDs and things. So we'll save those till the end. This is a word turn and based interview, but if you want to answer some of those at the end, we can just flick through a couple of them. You okay then, Helen, for a moment?
Yep, that's great for now, thanks.
Okay, so we'll move along on the questions, Harvey. Thank you very much for your time again. Harvey, I know you've visited most of the world at this point. Is there somewhere that you haven't been that you would like to really go?
So yeah, it's a big world, and my wife and I had decided a while ago that we were going to see the world while we can. You know, whether it had to do with wood turning or not. We had been taking up a good bit of travel, mostly through cruising. And we've been cruising a couple times a year now. And then, of course, COVID put the brakes on all of that. So there are so many places in the world that I do want to see. I just like to, when I see something on TV, I just love to say that, you know, we've been there. So I've been to Australia, you know, to demonstrate, but we spent several weeks there while we were there, and I got to see a good bit of Eastern Australia. Of course, I would like to see the other side of it, as well as the middle of Australia. But one of the places that I really do want to go is New Zealand, and I know I had been on the list to demonstrate there, whenever they were going to have their next symposium. But of course, COVID put the brakes on all of that. So I would like to get to New Zealand. That's someplace I do want to see. It's a beautiful country. And I do want to go back to the UK and Ireland. We did, I got to demonstrate in the UK at the AWGB once, but right before COVID, my wife and I did cruise around the UK. We spent 3 days in London, then we cruised around all around the northern tip of Scotland, and came back down and ended up in Dublin, and that's where I got to visit with you, Pat. But there's so much more in Ireland and the UK that we would like to see, where we have more time to do it. When you do it on a cruise ship, you got a couple hours in every port, wherever they decide to take you. But there's a lot more that we would like to see there. So the top of my list is New Zealand, and then I would like to get back into the UK and Ireland.
And hopefully very soon, Harvey, you'll get there, and back to Ireland, of course. We have a bit of catching up to do as well. So, okay, Harvey, I love this question. Carbide versus traditional.
You ask that every time. Everybody gives you similar answers, I think. Well, everybody generally says that, whatever works, for you works. But my typical answer is that I don't have any carbide tools other than one or two, I think 2 of the Mike Hunter carbide tools, but those are different. Those are not scraping tools. So the typical carbide tools that people talk about are like the Easy Wood tools, or there's a lot of other ones that are out there that are very similar, where they're basically scrapers, and they're sold with the marketing aspect that why waste your time learning to sharpen when you can learn to turn? Don't worry about sharpening, because you never have to sharpen these carbide tools. And I think that's doing a great injustice to the person who's using the tool. Now, I learned to turn with traditional tools, and that's what I still use today. But you will never get the surface quality on a piece of wood with those carbide scraping tools as you will with a good, sharp, traditional gouge or skew. So many times when I was teaching, like either Campbell or Aramont, students show up, we tell them what tools they should bring with them. If you don't have them, don't worry, the school will have them. But students show up with those carbide scraping tools, and they have all the intentions in the world of doing their turning part, teaching the basket illusion. They have all intentions of turning their platter with those carbide tools. And I do not allow them to do it. I say, you came here to learn to turn and to learn to do the basket illusion. So let me put a bowl gouge in your hand and let me teach you how to use it. And at first they get upset about it, because they think that I'm just being bossy or whatever. But they all go home and they now know how, after a week, they've learned to use a bowl gouge. And they've learned to sharpen one as well. So I don't approve of them, if you want to word it like that. I don't like them, okay? But I will say, though, that for some people, that might be the only way that they can turn. For example, handicapped people that have to sit down, I think can do better with them than they can with some traditional tools. When some of these woodworking stores like Woodcraft and Rockler here in the US, when they have their Turn for the Troops days, you know, where they invite the public to come in and turn a pen, they let them use those, you know, carbide scraping tools rather than regular traditional tools. Well, okay, this way they get to turn a pen. They spend a lot of time sanding it, but they get to turn a pen, where had we put a gouge in their hands, they may never have finished it. So to just let somebody wet their whistle, maybe okay, but I'm not a big fan of them.
Good honest
Sorry.
answer.
Hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings if you have them.
No, but this is your view, and that's what we want to hear. So yeah, we don't like anyone being plumazed. We want the honest answers. So good answers. So we'll get one more question from me, and then we'll go back to Helen. So the future of wood turning, Harvey, where do you see it going?
That's like, give me a crystal ball, will you? I mean, just what I've seen happen in the last 20 years. I mean, you know, 20 years ago, I could have never predicted where we would be today. I mean, with just the way, you know, just the way that technology has helped us along, you know, with better lathes and all the variable speeds and fantastic chucks and tools made out of the, you know, the best possible steels that we have available to us, you know, with the, you know, the 10V vanadium steels and things like that. You know, we've come so far from just in the last 20 years that I can't even begin to think where we'll be 20 years from now, not only in the equipment available to us, but what we will be doing with that stuff. You know, what will wood turning be like, you know, down the road? You know, I mean, we're doing so much now with coloring, embellishing, and piercing, and carving, and texturing, and cutting pieces up and reconstructing them. You know, deconstructing and reconstructing and all that. I mean, I can't imagine what else there is to do there. But there are so many imaginative people out there, what I call the true artists, to tell you the truth, that they will think of things to do. I wish I could even give you one thing that I think might happen in the next 20 years, but I can't think of something else that people might do 20 years from now. I don't know. You know, can you know, talking about the equipment, can our lathes get any better than what we have now? Is that possible? How? You know, can chucks get better? You know, do you add 6 jaws instead of 4 jaws? I don't, you know, how can a chuck get any better? Can our tools get better? You know, the steels, what we're using now, I mean, we can go so long now between sharpenings as compared to the way it was just 20 years ago. Are tools going to get better? I don't know. Is somebody going to invent a new tool? Is there a new kind of gouge that we don't know about yet? I doubt it. I don't have an answer to that, Pat. I really don't.
Yeah, well, I suppose if things change much more now, well, is it the main principle of going to be wood turning? You know, as you said, the lathes are just superb at the moment. Tools are superb with holding their edge, or sharpening systems. Even the quality of timber, I think, is, you know, because people have a better understanding of it, is probably better as well. So, yeah.
That was a good thing you mentioned with sharpening. You know, so look what we've come in sharpening now, you know, and, you know, how we've gone from, you know, regular wheels to CBN wheels now. You know, now we can sharpen our tools, you know, without them even getting hot. and where we basically lose like what, a micron or 2 microns of steel every time we touch up an edge. You know, I mean, we've extended the life of our tools all because of CBN wheels. You know, can that get better?
Yeah.
You know, Tormec's another whole system there, you know, but, you know, how much better can we get? I don't know.
Yeah, and how far more can we deviate away from the wood turning point of it? Because there are some pieces out there, and we know they've started out on the lathe, but you know, is it beyond recognition that it was on the lathe? Is the point I like to make. You know, I like to see some little hint that that was on the lathe, even though you know it was because you know the artist and his work. But yeah, sometimes you just really hard to comprehend this was ever on a lathe. But anyway, we'll see in 20 years, Harvey. We'll talk about it again anyway. So
I think like 3D printing might become part of what we're doing. I don't know. Everybody seems to be getting into that and doing stuff with it. I don't know, but just seems like that might be something that we start seeing combined with wood turning somehow. I don't know.
we've been doing this, Harvey, since early March. We're the first to start these meetings. And I've honestly hoped no one would ever bring 3D printing into this. And you have just put the kibosh on it. So, yeah, back to your room. How are we doing on questions, Helen?
Yep, I have a few here. Philip would like to know, do you offer IRDs to the public, like individuals, rather than just clubs, or not?
I have not been doing that. I've been busy enough doing the club IRDs that I haven't felt the need to do the ones where, you know, like you sell a ticket type of thing. So the answer, no, I haven't done that.
Is there any chance in the future?
Probably not.
Brilliant. Theo has asked, you were talking about sharpening systems just before. What sharpening system do you use?
So I use CBN wheels. I have a 1 horsepower grinder with two CBN wheels. I use an 80 grit on the right side and a 350 grit on the left side. So the 80 grit, of course, just for shaping a tool, and the 350 grit for general sharpening and touching up a tool.
Fantastic. Are you hand sharpening, or do you use a jig system with it?
Both. I use jigs for bowl gouge, you know, the fingernail grind. But some things like parting tools, scrapers and things, those I might do those on a platform or freehand.
That's
so
brilliant.
Combination.
That's all the questions I've got at the minute, Harvey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Just for that person inquiring about Harvey's demos, remember, if you're in a club, Harvey has email addresses there. You know, get your club to get Harvey on board for an IRD. And never say never, Harvey. You could always be doing the public IRDs in the future, so we don't know. But yeah, get your club or whatever to get Harvey on board there for an IRD. Well worth it. I've seen a good few of Harvey's demos and they're brilliant. Really well. Camera angles, everything spot on. Okay, Harvey, so we can move on to some of your work if you don't mind. So
okay.
Have you a piece of work that's your favorite? And great if we can see it.
Can I share my screen? I could show you some pictures. That would be the fastest way for me to do it.
Make you co-host there, Harvey. Just bear with me. Sorry now, just for to get all my Santa gear and all on here tonight, I had to alter my distance from the monitor. So there you go, Harvey. You should have the capabilities there now.
So I'll show you is some slides of some pieces of this will all be basket illusion, of course, that I've done over time, just so you could see various things. So I hope everybody could see that.
Yep, I can see it here on my end anyway, Harvey.
Okay, so these will just be some platters first. These are all around 12 to, I'd say, 13-inch diameter. And these will all be patterns that I mostly make up myself. Occasionally, there'll be something that I've gotten inspiration from someplace. So, for example, the one on the left is actually inspired very much by a platter that I saw from Melissa Antonio, one of the Pueblo potters from the Acoma Reservation in New Mexico. It's not an exact copy of it, but it's inspired by a platter that she did. Let's see here. Why is this slide not advanced? There we go. And these are both pieces that I came up with on my own.
And Harvey, are all these, just when we're on the pieces here, these photographs are just taken with your phone because they're really good quality pictures.
Yes, these are just taken with the iPhone.
Okay, so there's a good example for you folks, people wanting to photograph their work. So,
and I do put a vignette around it so you could see like sort of the white background behind it, kind of. And Michael Gibson got after me about doing that. He told me that detracts from the photo. So I have toned down the vignette. And you'll see as we get to some of the later pictures that it's not that bright white behind it. But Michael knows a lot more about photography than I do. So he's kind of coached me along. These two pieces are essentially the same, just that the one on the right, I filled in a lot of the natural wood area with that sort of greenish color. And you can just see that gives the piece a completely different look, even though it's essentially the same thing. That one on the left is a very dizzying pattern. You stare at it long enough, you won't remember your name. The one on the right is a copy of a Navajo ceremonial platter. And that opening that you see around 3 o'clock, that's called the gate. And it's always supposed to be oriented at 3 o'clock or to the east. And that the purpose of that is to let the evil spirits out of the basket. Now, I read that on the internet, so it has to be true. Both of these are very similar patterns to one that you saw earlier. I've done this pattern a number of times because every time I do it, it sells. So obviously people like it. So I've done it several different ways, never exactly the same, always slightly different. This was one I did just to see if I could do it on a square platter. I just wanted to see if it can be done. And it can be done, but it's hard to figure out what to do with the raw edge going around the platter. This was my latest platter. It's about close to 18 inches diameter. And what's unique about this one is that this is the first one that I've ever done that doesn't have the symmetry. Every other pattern has symmetry to it. It's something that's repeated over and over and over again. But this one has those little splashes of color completely at random. And I can't tell you how much that hurt my head to figure out where I want to put those individual little boxes of random colors so that it would remain random. My brain always wants to say, if you put a red dot there, you got to put a red dot here. And a blue dot over there means a blue dot over there. And to keep this random just drove me absolutely nuts. These are some very large bowls. These are about 15, 16 inches in diameter. They're Bradford pear, and they were turned while the wood was extremely green, literally fresh cut wood. I did the beating right away as I was turning it. And then I put it away to dry. And when it dried, they warped considerably. So these pieces are a good inch more in diameter with the grain than they are across the grain. And then they also warped in the height of them. So they have a much more natural basket look to it because they're not perfectly round. This teapot, Michael Gibson and I did together as a collaboration for the AAW auction in, I think it was Kansas City, I think in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So I did the turning of the pot itself and the basket illusion, and then Michael made the handle, the spout, the lid, and the base, and carved them in and made them fit. So this sold during the AAW auction. And these are just two vessels. These are done outside only. This one's done inside and outside. This one, it has a claim to fame in that this has more individual little squares than any other piece that I ever did. And this came in at somewhere around 55,000 little tiny individual squares. And the reason for that is I normally use a 1/8 inch beading tool, but I did this one with a 3/32 inch beading tool. Plus it's indexed to, I don't remember, but probably well over 200. So if you do all the multiplication and everything, it all came out to over 55,000 little tiny beads in there. This was my first replica of a Panama rainforest basket. This is one of the ones that sold at that exhibition that got me invited into that gallery. And the one on the left was the other one that was in that exhibition that also sold. These are fairly large pieces. Both of these are, I'd say, 13, 14 inches tall. And both of these, the one on the left was Bradford pear. Well, actually, both of these are Bradford pear, and also fairly large pieces. These two are both done from holly. So holly, as you know, is very, very white wood. And I was able to get some fairly large sized pieces of holly one time. Now, holly doesn't take the bead very well because it's too soft. So these have a sort of a flat, like tiled effect rather than having the rounded beads. It's a different look, but it's also just worked very, very well for, looks sort of more like mosaics than basket illusion. This one, if you talk about favorite pieces, I have two favorite pieces that I've ever done. This was one of them. This was done as almost a replica of an Acoma reservation piece by one of the Antonios. I don't remember if it was Frederica or Melissa Antonio. And this is one of the few times that I've actually sort of almost copied the piece. Now, this was pottery, not basket illusion, of course, but I like that pattern so much that I had to figure out how to do that. And this is a tremendous undertaking. It's a very large piece. It's about 14 inches tall. And this was the first piece I sold for what I considered a lot of money. I actually took it when I was doing a demonstration someplace. I took it with me to show, and I went home without it. These are also Bradford pear, fairly large pieces. And this is my second favorite piece. Also Bradford pear, very large piece, probably in the 14-inch tall range. And I just sold this in the last few months. I hated to sell this piece, but it was in the gallery. And I mean, it had a price on it that I never ever thought it would sell, but somehow it did. So I no longer own it. But this was a very, very complicated pattern. Also, one of the ones where I did replicate someone else's work. This was also from Melissa or Frederica Antonio from the Acoma Reservation. And it's not an exact copy because that's virtually impossible to do. But this pattern itself is very, very heavily inspired and influenced by their work. Likewise, both of these large pieces also very similar but different, also inspired by the Antonios. These are not replicas in any way, but these elements are typical elements that the Antonios use in a lot of their pottery. So I just sort of took some of their elements and then designed my own stuff around it. This is the very first piece that I did the inside as well as the outside. And then when I finally realized, okay, I can do that, from then on in, I believe I have every piece I've done has been done inside and out at the same time. This is the tallest piece that I've done in and out. This guy is about 11 inches tall. And it's an African pattern. The colors in African baskets are much, much brighter than you'll find on any of the Native American stuff. This is also very heavily influenced by the Antonios. These would be considered, the shape of these with the little lids on top would be African beer baskets. The patterns, of course, are not typically African. They're things of my own that I've came up with. the tartan one on the left, sort of Scottish, and the one on the right is just sort of kind of a matrix look. This is one of my favorites. I still have this piece. It's in my house. I didn't put it in the gallery because my wife really likes this one, and I decided I'm never going to sell this one. This is a very recent piece I did. I try to do this in the colors of Rainbow Pride. And the next trip I make to the gallery, this one will go into the gallery. My first attempt at doing a piece in all the rainbow colors, it failed miserably because I screwed something up very early in the piece, and I should have quit while I was ahead and just started over. But I figured I'll fix it, I'll make it work. And 3 weeks later, when I was done with the piece, it looked terrible. So I just started over and did another one. And then it came out the way I expected it to. These are the very, very first two pieces that I ever did. Just I like to show, the one on the left was the first piece. It was done with Sharpie markers, way too many colors. That bullseye in the middle just doesn't belong there. Just everybody starts someplace. And the second piece on the one on the right was my second one. So that's it for my Basque illusion work. Something I've been doing now is something I'm calling pottery illusion. So I've done a few pieces. I've done 4 altogether. I only have photos of these 2. So the one on the left is a very large piece, and it's actually sitting on the desk right next to me. You might have seen that when the camera was on me. And then the one on the right is about 9 inches tall. So these are basically done with just a hollow vessel, and then either India inks or acrylic inks to put the design on it. The one on the left is just painted with white gesso, and then the design is just inked in with a black India ink marker. So that's what I have there for my pieces. So just to give you an idea how big this one is here, you can see the size of it. It's a fairly large piece.
That is just absolutely amazing work, Harvey. You must have the patience for this, as we would say here in Ireland. So I think there's a few questions popped in there, Helen, about the wood turning. We just again leave the tech till the end of it, please. So just.
Yep, we've got a question from Peter. He's asking, when you get inspiration from another artist, do you show them your work when you're finished?
Do I show them the work? No, I don't. But I always do give the attribution to where I got the inspiration from. So whenever I post a piece on the internet, if it was inspired by the work of someone else, I always say that inspired by the work of Melissa Antonio of the Acoma Reservation, or inspired by so-and-so, or by the Zimbabwe African basket makers. So anytime I'm inspired by somebody else, I always say where the inspiration came from. I think that's the right thing to do.
Yes, I agree. Gary's asking, this is the question, how do you do the beading on the inside of your pieces?
So, the big secret there is, once I tell you, I have to kill you, right? So the big secret there is all of those pieces are done in 2 halves. So they're just 2 halves that are glued together. So you do the beading on everything on the inside first on both halves. Of course, you got to make sure that the inner diameters are exactly the same. So if you imagine just 2 bowls getting glued together, that's the way it's done. And then after the inside is all finished, beading, burning, coloring, and then you glue them together so that the design flows from the top through the bottom, and that the grain's running the same direction on both halves. You glue them together, and then you could return the outside and do all the work on the outside.
Brilliant. And Harold is asking, what brand of pens do you use?
So I assume you meant about the ink pens. So I use Faber-Castell, and they're called PITT, P-I-T-T, artist markers. And these are India ink. So I prefer these over any other markers out there because they're India ink. So A lot of the other markers like Sharpies and Prismacolor and Copic brand markers are all alcohol dyes. So alcohol dyes are very common, and there's lots of great colors, and there's really good nibs and tips on some of them. But the problems with all of those is, first of all, they're alcohol dyes, and while they could be permanent, they are not light proof, which means that they will fade in sunlight. All alcohol dyes eventually will fade in the sun. The second thing is that alcohol dyes tend to bleed. So when you hold the pen on a piece long enough, it will bleed where you don't want it to be. And then the third thing is it also penetrates into the wood very, very deeply. So India ink is pigmented. So basically it lays sort of on the surface rather than in the surface. It doesn't bleed at all, and it is light fast. So if you make a mistake with the India ink, you can actually shave it away with a scalpel. Not scrape it away, shave it away. You can lay a scalpel on its side and just basically shave the ink off the top of the piece without ruining the shape of the bead. It's something you don't want to have to do because it slows you down tremendously, but you can fix mistakes with India ink. With alcohol dye markers, it penetrates so deeply you have to carve the mistake out and it will look terrible. So I've been using these India ink markers for a long time now. They're inexpensive, about $3 a piece. There's about 60 colors that they make, but only 11 of them have the right types of tips that I need to do the work. So I basically have 11 colors that I can work with.
That's great. I've just popped that link into the chat there as well. Now, Gary would like to know, do you bleach Bradford pear before inking it?
So no, I don't bleach it. Bradford pear is very unusual wood, very common here in the southeast part of the U.S. Bradford pear was planted by landscapers as a quick growing tree, that would provide great shade and lots of nice white flowers in the springtime. They don't actually bear fruit. And they are very, very pretty trees. However, when they flower, they smell so bad that I remember when I used to walk my dog wouldn't want to go down the streets where the Bradford pears were flowering because it smelled that bad. That if the dog won't go down there, it stinks. But the problem with the Bradford pear trees is they grow so fast and they develop a very huge canopy, and they also split out into multiple trunks. So the root system can't support the tree. So whenever we get a windstorm, either the tree splits or it all comes down. So Bradford pear is very, very readily available in the southeast part of the United States. And it's a very hard and dense and heavy wood, but it turns like butter. It's like a hot knife cutting through butter. It's a huge confidence builder for new wood turners because you can throw beautiful ribbons of shavings over your shoulder using a dull knife. I mean, it is just amazing wood to turn. But when it's dry, it's as hard as concrete. But it leaves a tremendous, beautiful surface quality. And it's a very, very bland wood. It has no character at all, no beautiful grain to it. It's just blah. But it's perfect for doing like what I do with it and what Michael Gibson's doing with it. The other thing about it is when you cut it, within 5 minutes of cutting, when it's wet, usually within just 5 minutes of cutting it with a chainsaw, it turns orange. And you say, how could you work with orange wood like that? But once it dries, it's just an oxidation. Once it dries, you can turn away the orange, or you could even sand it off. And then you're left with a beautiful, nice, bland looking white colored wood. So it's a very, very light wood. Doesn't really need to be bleached at all. I've never done any bleaching anyway.
Sounds like a fantastic timber. Michael Gibson has actually just asked, can you show the warped piece you have on Facebook at the moment?
Yes, I can. You have to give me a minute to run out and get it. It's in the other room.
Okay, when Harvey is going out there, I'll point out to Andy Chen. No, Andy, he doesn't make mistakes. It's only a rumor. Our mug for our very kind people who donate to keep this running. Our winner tonight is Catherine Sylvie. That's the name that came in. It could be somebody's partner or whatever. Chloe will be in touch anyway. Our next guest, most of you will see our next guest's work. If you've ever picked up the AAW magazine or any other magazine for that matter and see a wood turning photograph, the possibility is that Andy Wolf has taken that photograph. So we're going to talk to Andy about her work, her photography, and her career in wood turning in the next meeting. So that's going to be another interesting one. So back to you, Harvey. Sorry about that.
Okay, so this is a piece I just finished yesterday, and you can see how warped it is. This was graphic pear that was also turned while it was very, very wet. I actually just got this wood from Elizabeth Ross, probably not even a month ago. So it's turned to about 1/4 of an inch thick. And so as I turned it, I did the outside and I cut all the beads on the outside. And then when I started hollowing out the inside, I worked down in stages and cut the beads. And then I thin out the next stage, cut the beads, because I knew the wood was going to start moving very quickly. And in order to cut beads, the wood has to be running true. So so I did all the turning, beading. It's about 1/4 of an inch thick, maybe not even. And then I just let it dry. And because it's so thin, it dried like within 2 weeks. And all I really do is I weigh it. And when it stops losing weight, then I know I can go to work on it. So this piece weighs about 12 ounces. It's 11 inches this way and about 10 3/8 of an inches in the other way. And you can see the profile of it is, it's all willy wonky, very, very warped look. So this is my very latest piece, just finished yesterday, and this is a very typical African Zimbabwe pattern that they would have used for the grain winnowing bowls, where they would put the grain in the basket and then they would shake it up and throw it up into the air, and then the chaff would blow away and then the grain would fall back into the basket. So this is very typical of the baskets that they would use in Africa.
Okay, Helen.
That's lovely, thank you. Robert, there's a question just come in from Robert there. He's asking, with the wet timber, does the burning of the wet wood pieces happen while it's still wet?
So there's two burning things that have to happen. One is the burning of the valleys between the beads. And that is something I do with a very thinned out Formica or plastic laminate. And that is done while the wood is wet. And that is very difficult to do while the wood is wet, because you need heat and friction, the heat caused by the friction, of course, to burn that black line in the valley. And that's done while it's wet. But the radial lines that are burned with the wood burning pen, by the time I do that, this piece is dry.
That's great. And Jay has just asked, how do you cut the beads? Do you use special tools or do you use a gouge?
So the beads, I cut those with a D-Way beading tool. And I use the 1/8 inch beading tool for all of the beads on the piece, except for the rim. The rim bead, I either use a 3/16 or a 1/4 inch beading tool, just to make the rim larger than the rest of the beads. So these are D-Way beading tools, sold by D-Way Tools out in Washington, state of Washington.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Harvey. That's all the questions I've got at the moment. I'm just going to pop that in the chat box as well.
Okay, Harvey, thank you. So we have one last question for you, Harvey, but just before that, I want to say a huge thank you to Helen. Chloe isn't here with us in the Zoom meeting, but she has been messaging me there through her own message system there. She couldn't sustain the Zoom connection tonight due to the internet, so apologies that Chloe wasn't on board, but she is in the background doing her work as usual, helping people with emails and things as always. So thanks again, Helen. And a huge thanks to Mr. Harvey Meyer. That was really informative and a really good insight into your career, Harvey. Thank you very kindly.